Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome. My name is Ben Iacono. I am a member of the Alliance of Climate and Environmental Stewards, and we are the sponsor of these community eco conversations. And this is the sixth one since we started in October, and these eco conversations are meant to share thoughts, resources, information, and personal stories that will spark conversation among participants about how to be better stewards of our planet and our local communities. We hope that the discussions will be lively, transformative, and the community spirit uplifting, because all of these are meant to be positive things, or learning experiences, or sharing experience, those type of things. And we hope that at the end of these conversations, it will spark a call to action for whatever positive things that we can do collectively. Today's presentation is Sustainable and Responsible Gardening, presented by Molly Janicki. And a brief bit of information about Molly. Molly grew up surrounded by the forests of Vermont, which instilled in her a deep appreciation for nature. She has been privileged to build her career working in beautiful gardens throughout New England. When the links between traditional landscaping and climate change became impossible to ignore, Molly founded her own company to provide thoughtful horticultural solutions that reduce the energy and resource typically required of our landscapes. One of her current activities, among other things, is teaching 2 classes at the winter session of the Greater Newburyport Adult and Community Education. There will be ample time for questions after Molly's presentation, and feel free to raise whatever questions. The session will be recorded, so it will be on YouTube for those friends or family members who would like to hear it that are not able to come. I ask you to silence your phones, those of you, and I keep forgetting mine. Beyond that, I'll introduce Molly, and we welcome Molly.
Thanks, everybody. Hi. All right, I hate using microphones, but I will because it's being recorded. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited to talk to you all about sustainable and responsible gardening. It's what I do. It's my passion, so it's a welcome thing to talk about. And I could talk about it for hours and days, so I'll try to be mindful. And I do have a couple of classes running, and there is still time to sign up for the weeds one, which is next Thursday evening, where I'm going to focus specifically on weeds and weeding, really practical. I believe there's still room, so you can check it out and sign up still. And I'm using notes to keep myself organized, because I do get excited and tend to go off on tangents, especially if you raise your hand, which I want you to do. Please ask, okay? All right, so a lot of these talks that focus on this sort of ecological gardening, sustainable gardening, spend a lot of time talking about why it's important. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on the why, because I'm hoping that all of us here understand that there's a biodiversity crisis happening, that climate change is real, and we don't need to get into the importance of being mindful and aware of what we do, okay? So I'm gonna skip the why, because I get really frustrated by that. I wanna know how to do it, okay? So that's what I'm gonna talk about. Yeah, we've done a lot of ecological damage in the pursuit of landscaping and development. Habitat destruction is another major leading driver of the biodiversity crisis. And I'll just briefly mention biodiversity in the environment is really important because it builds the entire web that sustains life. It allows for things to change and grow and develop. As we start to lose the really unique environmental relationships that are happening, our whole ecosystems start to break down. And eventually we're gonna reach a tipping point where that becomes unsustainable. Okay, so that's all I'm gonna say about that. Our personal property, our landscapes, our roof decks, our backyards, our personal property, we're just here on borrowed time, right? There are creatures that have lived on that land before us, that will live on that land after us, and I think it's our responsibility to share with our non-human neighbors. So let's talk about how we can do that. First, I'll just mention really briefly about my background. I do come from a career in estate gardening. I was not a sustainable, native-friendly, forward gardener for much of my career, and I have spent all of my years out of college gardening for a living. It was the experience of working on an estate with a full crew at my disposal where I began to look at and think about the resource distribution. This had nothing to do with sustainability and everything to do with just how I was moving people around and where I needed to do the work for this 13-acre, highly manicured garden that I was responsible for. And what I started to see was that in this garden in particular, this formal garden, a ton of resources were needed, a ton of people and time and water and plants. So I started replacing annuals with perennials in the parterre and noticed how just immediately the time spent on changeouts, right? The money spent on doing that. And I could spend that time and money elsewhere on the property and my client was still happy. But I'm gonna show you one example in particular that was kind of like the kick in the butt. So you can see in between the cracks in the pavement of this garden, there's a low ground cover. This ground cover was a plant called Irish moss or Scotch moss, and it was the absolute wrong plant for this place. It wants a cool, damp, shady, part shade environment, and it was in blazing hot sun. We were dragging hoses, we were on our hands and knees in the full sun weeding it. It was an absolute nightmare. And it was the wrong plant in the wrong place. When we put the right plant in the right place, we had amazing results. We did not have to water, we did not have to weed, and the client was really thrilled with the flower. So it just started my journey in looking at ways that I can solve resource-heavy problems horticulturally. Let's talk about traditional gardening for a hot second. Traditional gardening landscaping is very much about control. It's very much about the separation of humans from nature. I call this the green meatball phenomenon. It's widespread and prevalent, and it's actually very resource heavy. The thing is, this is what we default to. This is the easy button, is a lawn with a bunch of meatballs at the foundation, because every landscaper knows how to deal with this. It's the easy button. And I'm not here to trash landscapers, but they're not doing our ecology any favors, okay? Does this garden support wildlife? What lives here? Some sparrows, some chipmunks, maybe, right? Okay, I'm gonna just bypass that one. Better than flowers, better than lawns are the connections that we can get with nature when we embrace the ecosystem and stop trying to separate ourselves from our non-human neighbors. These are all creatures that I've seen in my own backyard, and many others as well. But these creatures don't live in traditional landscapes. A lot of garden talks that I go to focus on the pictures of the, stunning dahlias and the double peonies and the unique coleus, and we've all been to those, maybe, garden talks. But those things don't support these. And these encounters bring connection. They lower your blood pressure. They decrease your, you get better sleep. You lower your mortality rates. Kids will have more time outside, less screen time, mental restoration, right? We need to embrace the outside. And it's not going to come from your landscapers. It's going to come from you demanding it. Let me just tell you a couple of things that you're looking at here. I don't know if you can see the bottom middle picture is actually a fledgling robin taking a bath in a fountain. This is right outside my back door, literally right outside my back door. If you have the opportunity to put running water in your garden, do it now, put it close by, because the amount of wildlife that it will attract will blow you away. This is a really simple bubble fountain that we have, a piece of granite drilled through. It's so easy. They're not expensive. They're totally beautiful, functional, and you will see more stuff, I'm telling you. All right, I'm hoping this works. I've never done a video before. Yeah. You guys, I'm right now taking a course with the UMass to become a certified pollinator steward, and I'm learning so much. Do you want to see it again? I'm learning so much about pollinators. This guy is, gal, it's a female. It's dragging that cicada, which is like 3 times its body weight, into its nest where it's going to lay an egg on it. Get this, if the egg is male, it only gets 1 cicada. If the egg is female, she'll bring it 2 or 3. The females are bigger, they need more. This thing doesn't sting you. It's giant, and you're gonna freak out if you see it. It doesn't sting you, it's totally harmless. This is a good one too. Can you see that guy? Gal, that's another gal, right? So that's a female ruby-throated hummingbird on the Monarda, the bee balm. Can you see it? She's bouncing around a little bit. She's gonna see me and then she's gonna zoom away. To me, these encounters are why I do what I do and why I want you all to embrace this in your landscapes as much as you can. There's so many opportunities to do this. It's so easy. It's cheaper. I mean, come on. Okay, so how do we do it, right? Like, that's the big question. So I'm here to tell you that, and this, might be a little shocking, that the aftercare is as important as planting native plants. All right? So everybody's like, plant native, plant native, plant native. Yeah, plant native. But if you then blow everything every spring and every fall and take a buzz cutter to make it a meatball, you're not helping anything. You're not doing what you want to do. You can plant whatever you want if you're going to do that, right? There's no point in planting native if you're not going to create the full habitat to support the life cycle from start to finish. This is the other thing that I hear a lot. Well, I'm helping the pollinators with my non-natives because they're getting nectar, right? I'm providing nectar. Well, nectar is what they drink. Where's the protein Where's the relationship to the plant? Where's what it needs to build its nest? You're just giving it a stopover drink. You are not supporting the life at all. And a lot of things aren't even looking for nectar. A lot of pollinators are not looking for nectar, right? Okay? Wasps. There's a lot of wasps that are pollinators that are not looking for nectar. All right. So anyway, how you take care of your garden is as important. Don't do a spring and fall cleanup. Don't do it. If you have piles of leaves, let's talk about leave the leaves real quick. All right, here's my thing. This is my shtick. Leave the leaves, comma. Okay? Leave the leaves, comma, because it's not leave the leaves, period. We can't do that. Nobody can do that. You got to pick up the leaves where they're in the way. You got to pick up the leaves where they're on the sidewalk. If you have an area of lawn that you want to keep as lawn, you got to pick up the leaves, okay? I get it. But it's leave the leaves, comma, because there's lots of places where you can leave the leaves. Leave the leaves in all of your beds. Why are we getting rid of the leaves out of our beds? Your plants probably don't need the spring and fall cleanup. Unless you have something really futsy and fartsy, you don't need to do the cleanup. And if you do have a ton of leaves and you do feel like I do need to clean up, then pick something else to plant under them. Ferns come right up through the thickest layer of oak leaves you can imagine. All right? So I don't want to hear any, I'm getting fired up. I don't want to hear any of that. What else we got? This is that same garden just from the other side in the fall. I don't do a cleanup. I don't do a fall cleanup. I don't do a spring cleanup. We go through and kind of tidy. It's like you look at it and you see, all right, is there something that's out of place? Is there something that's maybe spilling onto the lawn that's going to smother? I'll take care of that. But I'm not going through with any kind of blower. It would just destroy the whole thing. The other thing that you'll notice about this is it's really simple plant palette. I feel like a lot of people make the mistake of trying to do everything all at once. You can build diversity over time, and you're gonna have much better luck doing it that way. Keep it really simple to start. Lean into just a handful of things that you know are gonna work. This is ferns, coneflower, thyme, and grasses. I mean, fail safe, right? And over time, we'll add some bulbs. Maybe she wants some dahlias for summer color. We add things to build interest. But if we don't do anything, the garden is fine. It's good on its own. And that to me is exactly what we want. It's sustainable for humans. It's building life. It's got a lot of native plants, right? Everybody with me? Yes, Molly. This is the picture. This is the picture that I used to kick off my weeds class, which is, again, next Thursday, shameless plug, 6 p.m., Greater Newburyport Adult Continuing Education. You can sign up online. So yes, this is the picture that I used to kick off my weeds class, because this is a garden that I've been taking care of for a number of years now. And what has been a phenomenal experience is the weeding reduction that I've seen over time. When we first got to this property, it was very traditional, lots of individual plants with mulch in between. And I said, that's the worst, because I can talk for days about why mulch is the worst. And we can do maybe a Q&A after or something. But here's the thing that we did on this property. We started to observe what the plants were that were growing up in between the plants that we wanted. Okay? So maybe what we would traditionally think of as weeds. We started to observe those. And what is the definition of a weed? What's a weed? Well, it could be a plant out of place. It's a plant we don't want, right? But one man's trash is another man's treasure. So let's figure out what we're throwing away here. So what we discovered was one of the weeds was a ground cover veronica. Now, it's not the ground cover veronica that is cultivated and sold in stores, but it's related to it, and it still acts like a nice ground cover. It still has a small, delicate flower. It's not quite as showy as the cultivated variety, and it's not native, but it is not invasive. It doesn't take over, and it acts as a delightful ground cover, crowding out pretty much every other weed. So we embraced this weed, as a guest in the garden, and it's welcome to stay. Every now and then, we kind of pull it away from things as it gets crowded. Okay, so weeding is something we can think about. All right, I'm not going to get into it. Take my class. I want to go really quick through this transformation because I think it's a really good example of the meatball phenomenon that most of us, you, maybe all of the houses everywhere are dealing with, right? A lot of just sort of geometric shapes, nothing cohesive, and then a big bed of mulch to be the icing on the cake there to keep the weeds down. And thankfully the client was not into it and wanted something else. I hope this is the... So I'm just realizing now I might have pulled up the longer presentation. That's okay. I'm gonna switch. But yeah, so we did a change out here, right? We got rid of all the meatballs. We put in, this is a very simple plant palette. Let me show you a better picture up close. This is a very simple plant palette. It's just 4 plants, mostly native. Now, where this is located, right on the road in Rowley, right on 1A in Rowley, I'm not building a ton of habitat just because of the location. There's not a lot of stuff that's creatures that I'm gonna support. So the nativeness was secondary to making it beautiful and easy. But we still managed to get a fair number of native plants in. Those echinacea, the coneflower, of course, are a wonderful native. The pollinators love them. And fortunately, because of the location right on the road, the bunnies can't get to them. So it was a perfect opportunity to use that. We can leave them up, the birds use them all winter. And then Baptisia and Amsonia and allium across the front, that's a lovely non-native ornamental allium that we're using to just kind of hold everything in place and absorb some of the salt from the road, all right? And this garden needs no maintenance, no care, no water. I visited it one time, it had 4 weeds, literally 4 weeds. So, choosing the right plants for the right place, keeping it simple. This is how we do it. That's how you do it. All right. Okay, so hold on a minute. I have to apologize because I have a long presentation and then a short presentation. And look, see, there it is, short presentation short. I just pulled the wrong one up. I could tell. I was like, wait, I didn't put some of these I skipped. All right, so let me just we're gonna have to, we gotta, it won't let me go forward unless we watch the cicada killer. Yeah, go ahead.
Can you tell us the name of the plant that replaced that moss, that's beautiful purple flowers?
Yes, I'll tell you the name of it, but I will also tell you that usually at that point in the presentation, I put an asterisk to say, somebody always asks me what this plant is, and I don't usually recommend this plant. The point of it is right plant, right place. So it's a woolly thyme. I think it's specifically mother of thyme. Don't write it down because, first of all, it's really hard to find. Second of all, I don't actually like it in a lot of situations. Just happened to be the exact perfect. We can run it over with the lawnmower. There's no irrigations. It's hot and dry. It's nowhere near grass. If you're thinking of it near lawn, don't do it. Okay, sorry. Let's get to, where were we? Okay, all right. How am I doing here? I'm doing good, right? All right, so yeah, build biodiversity over time. Okay, so this is the slide, and I actually updated it. It's a little bit better, a better version of the slide I was using previously. Ecological succession is simply the orderly and predictable change in the dominant species of plants. We should use this when we're thinking about our gardens. Our gardens are not static moments in time. Traditional landscaping maintenance maintains things as they are in this moment right now. Nothing can change. That's not how nature works. If you plan and think about the orderly change within your garden, you will not be fighting nature, and your gardens will work without you having to do anything. Let's talk about this really specifically in this one example that you can see for yourself right over on Greenleaf Street in Newburyport, right behind CVS. Okay, so this was a wonderful, wonderful client who read Doug Ptolemy's book. Who's heard of Doug Ptolemy? John, you better raise your hand. Talked about him in class last week. Okay. Doug Ptolemy is an amazing entomologist. He's written a bunch of books. You can check this one out afterwards if you want. It's just one example. I love him. I love his work. He's fantastic. So she read Doug Ptolemy's book. He's talking about the biodiversity crisis, the importance of insects, and she wanted to build a garden for the insects in this little corner, okay? So we did. We cleaned it out and we put in a host of native species of plants. And using that slide with the ecological succession in mind, I built in layers so that I break ground, I plant, I break ground, I create the disturbance in the forest succession, right? I break ground, I create this disturbance. And then I have my early succession plants as well as my longer, later, slower growing plants. So my first things that I do is use a living mulch, a green mulch, over the top of this fine leaf mulch. So I break ground, I plant my shrubs, I plant my ferns and perennials, I put a lovely little light leaf mulch over the top, and then over that I seed Rudbeckia hirta. And by August, a few months later, we have a delightful show. And this is breathtaking. This is temporary. And I'm planning for this to be temporary. I know that over time, the goldenrod is going to fill in and take over. The shrubs are going to get much, much bigger. And the seeds will find fewer and fewer nooks and crannies within the garden that are advantageous to them. I'm planning for this. But in doing so, we don't have to weed. We don't have to mulch. We don't have to water because I'm working with the natural systems within the environment. Now, asterisks, we did have to water initially, no doubt. Anytime you do a new installation, no matter what you're putting in, it needs water. Once things were established, we were off and running. And it really was like 6 to 12 weeks of very active watering and then just very occasional. Okay. And then, because we're creating habitat for the insects, we don't clean it up, right? That would defeat the entire purpose. We would kill all this life. We would be like, hey, come live here so that we can murder you, right? Because that's what a fall cleanup does. Ooh, I'm fired up today. This is it just even later in the season. There's nothing wrong with this. This is what it should look like. It should not look bare. I mean, I hate to say it, but look at the gardens out here. This is terrible. We can improve, right?
Yeah.
We can improve. Okay. So lastly, I just want to mention my 3 favorites. I have so many. You got to imagine I have so many. But if you only plant these 3 plants, you are going to do the most good that you could possibly do for the ecosystem because these 3 plants support a ridiculous amount of life. And they're easy, they can handle a wide range of environments, and you won't have to do anything. Plant oak trees. There's many different types, not all of them are giant. They support, I think this number is actually higher now, but at least 473 different species of pollinators. And the web that is supported by those 400 is exponential, okay? So oak trees, if you have the room at all, plant an oak. Under, around, nearby, plant highbush blueberries. It's a New England native, it's the best. Plant highbush blueberries. Don't worry about the fruit. Share the fruit with the birds. Buy your fruit from John, right? John, yeah, Maple Crest. Buy your fruit from him. Let the birds have the fruit. You can enjoy the fall color. Know that the early flowers are supporting a ton of native pollinators, right? Because blueberries bloom super, super early. They're really sweet white flowers, if you don't know what I'm talking about. The reason I have the picture on the left, that's a picture of a giant old blueberry at the top of Old Town Hill. And I talk in my class about size and structure, but I'm not going to now. I just like to point out that it's at the top of Old Town Hill, which, if you know, is fully exposed, wind, not wet. This one is like in a swamp. So when you talk about the range of conditions that high bush blueberry can take and tolerate, I mean, full spectrum, full spectrum. Freaking love that plant. Okay, and also 282 different species of pollinators, right? Ridiculous, that's so many. Lastly, plant goldenrod. Don't give me any flack about allergies, that's a whole bunch of bunk. Y'all know that, that's not true, it's not allergies, okay? I could get into it, I don't need to, it's not allergies. Canada goldenrod, super aggressive, but there's a bunch of different species. You don't have to go with Canada goldenrod. You can do something that isn't as aggressive. I personally love that it's aggressive. I want to rip out everybody's lawn and put in goldenrod and nothing else, because you will still be supporting the highest number of beneficial pollinators of any perennial in New England, right? Any perennial. Goldenrod. There's a ton of different options. Personally, I use seaside goldenrod the most. It's a little shorter and a little bit more well-behaved. So picture an oak surrounded by a field of goldenrod. It's all you need. That's all I want to do out here on the drive into Council on Aging, but they're going to make me do more than that. But really, that's all you need. Start there, build the biodiversity over time. You're going to have a lot more success. Visually, it's going to look nice because of its simplicity. Don't worry about, oh, there's nothing blooming. It's okay. It's going to look really cool just because it's simple and uniform. All right. Last thing, some stuff to consider. All right. Traditional landscaping uses many unnecessary resources: mulch, water, pesticides, herbicides, fungicides, time. Like your mulching is the worst. Oh my God. We all have the opportunity to share our outdoor spaces with the world around us, and we have to retrain our eye to see the beauty in a less cultivated aesthetic. I personally don't find this cultivated aesthetic that you see in a lot of traditional landscaping. I'm gesturing around the building. I don't find that aesthetic beautiful anymore, but people still do. People want that clean look. So some of it is retraining your eye. I don't think that native wild gardens need to be messy. I really don't. And that's another reason I preach simplicity, because if you do a simple plant palette, it doesn't look messy. It looks intentional, okay? So it's less cultivated, maybe, just because we're not doing a spring and fall cleanup. And we need to relinquish some control to better share with our non-human neighbors. I'm on all the social medias. Thank you, guys.